pleasure to present to this community about EOTech DevNet Flood Tools Tracker and to do a demonstration. My name is Yasha Mose, and I'm supporting NASA's capacity building program and as a part of that effort, I serve on the Secretariat of EOTech DevNet initiative, along with my brilliant colleague Erin Martin, who will also be co-presenting some of the slides with me today. But before we jump into the demonstration of the tracker itself, we wanted to give you a little bit of the bigger picture about EOTech DevNet and then zoom into specifically the flood work because EOTech DevNet, it sounds like a mouthful. It's quite an acronym, but it stands for Earth Observation Training, Education, and Capacity Development Network, and it's a brainchild of several networks themselves. You can see them on the screen. I'm sure you know most, if not all of them, but they include Committee on Earth Observation Satellites, the Group on Earth Observation, WMO, VLAB, United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, that all have some initiatives related to Earth observation and capacity building. And the goal here was just to make sure that we improve collaboration among those partners and others to make sure that we know about each other's initiatives, we don't duplicate efforts, and as the first kind of areas of cooperation, chose to do focus on disaster risk reduction and then climate adaptation and mitigation, though obviously quite large topics themselves. But as the network grew, we've been around for a couple of years now. We're able to connect with other space agency partners, academic institutions, other initiatives and training providers. You can see some of them here. Again, this is just representatives of these organizations joined our meetings, contributed to some of our, products and resources. And I'm sure, again, some of these will be familiar, but it's not at all like an exhaustive list of our numbers. But another way to look at it, we're tracking sort of each individual person who engages with us through our kind of network analysis effort. So each dot here represents a person, and you can see how sort of the network really been grown over the last couple of years, and we now have over 600 people that have been engaged with our activities, participate, receive information. So we're excited that the network of network is indeed growing. And the way we're structured, there is that global coordination among the sort of these 5 network groups that I mentioned, and the Secretariat sort of supports that and does the website and socials and things like that. But really the heartbeat of the program is on the left side of here, the regional communities of practice that we currently have in 4, large regions in Africa, America, Asia, Oceania, and Europe. I think following the Group of Earth observation way they divide the world in that way. And each of those regions have their community of practice, like regional task team that meets quarterly, shares the information, talks about the needs and gaps around capacity building in the particular region, share what are the upcoming work they're doing, what are the conference people attending, new trainings that they developed. And when we asked the colleagues at the regional task teams what specific topic they want to explore first, as we wanted to go deeper in those thematic working groups, flood came up at the top of the list, and that's kind of where we started our work and kind of been active with EOTech DevNet on flood for about a year, a little bit more now. And then there's also work on the droughts that is in the wings. But today we're going to talk about flood, since this is a global flood partnership conversation. And so the flood thematic working groups, the idea here is that you will get a combination of both the flood subject matter experts, folks like yourself, and maybe hydrologists and people who work in the government who actually need to use that information, or nonprofits around the world, as well as capacity development subject matter experts who know how to organize trainings, who know how to make the different flood tools accessible. And again, the goal here is to identify gaps, set priorities for regional capacity building. We had over a dozen, 16 regional meetings in last year. I have about 60 colleagues that are actively involved in this effort, all led by local experts, not trying to drive it, from the states, but help regions locally. And as part of this effort, we have some early products. One of them is a flat tool tracker that I'm going to demonstrate. And then another very interesting effort that Erin is going to be talking more about is the flood event analysis and different use cases that were also requested by the community to better understand sort of how this work could be utilized and what things we have in common when dealing with different flood events. So without further ado, I think we're going to switch now to the flood tools tracker. You're going to access it at this website. We post the link in the chat. And the goal of this effort, again, as we started talking to people, we'll learn about all the different tools that they're using, all the different trainings that people are creating. And we just wanted to have a one kind of stop shop for users to find that information, compare different tools, see which one fits best for their needs instead of just trying to uh, Google, flood tools or flood trainings. And that's what we created. So I'm going to switch now to the flood tracker um, site. Well, you can see it now. Again, it's a little basic, but we're planning some further improvements to it. But it does talk about here this landing pages about the purpose of the tracker that I mentioned, how you can help users choose the optimal tool to prepare for, mitigate, manage responses to specific flood events, as well as identifying the right training, capacity building, support, and then how to use the tracker. There's a recording, other use cases, etc. But the main part of the tracker is really these 2 pages here, the tools and capacity development resources. So on the tool side of things, you'll have this sort of long catalog, other pages of different flood tools that we are currently aware of. I'm sure as practitioners and students of this area would know a lot of. This is not necessarily the exhaustive list, but I think a good start. And again, if you look at any particular one of these resources, then you can see the information that the authors contributed about the different tools and different metrics. Again, for some tools it's very detailed. For some, there's some information might still be missing. And again, here's an example of European flood awareness system. And again, will always be a link to a website, as a contact person. You can look at the different capacity development, resources, how you can learn how to use this tool. But again, this list could be, again, maybe overwhelming to some. So there's different ways people can sort by a specific region and see if it's operational with this in development. But here on the left side, there is our ability to filter stuff that you might be more interested in. So if you're just interested in forecasting, and you want to look, so what are the global forecasting tools in the system, then here are the ones that it will help you narrow the list. Here's the GeoClose example listed here. So you can access some of those tools, some operational, some are in development. And another maybe helpful way for people, again, if you want to look for a particular country, region, see what tools can I use. And okay, here's take Nigeria, for example. You choose that sort of on the map, and again, click filter, and here will give you a smaller list, but again, it will give you all the global tools, but also some tools that say that we're particularly applicable for Africa. All right, and then you can see that, oh, there's a resource from Nigerian Hydrological Services agencies that added their materials to the tools tracker. So that's kind of I hope that will help people identify the right resource, and as you play with it, you can try different combinations and find things that are helpful. And again, if you find that something is missing that you're aware of, please add it to the tools tracker. and it's very easy to do. You can click the form, here and answer some questions again. You don't have to enter every single field, um, and but still, please add the resources that we can then contact the people who may be developing these resources to fill the gaps. But since we are a education, training, capacity development organization, our focus was not just on the tools, but on the helping people access those and give them the training. So there's a capacity development resources that's structured in a similar way, where you can look again. There's a list of different trainings, and you can look at again, here are the trainings you know in Spanish, right? And there's probably not as many, but you can find some that relate to flood, and um, specifically capacity building about particular tools like using SAR or other ways. And you can find again other webinars, MOOCs, use cases of how to use this thing. And also again, ability to add, if you're aware of different trainings, you can add them here by completing information, and then we'll kind of review it and then add to the tracker. And again, here's another kind of interesting link here for those of you who are familiar with Community Earth Observation, Community Earth Observation satellites. They have a training calendar that this links kind of shows you specifically things related to flood, and not, this is going to show upcoming events as well. So doesn't seem to have any now, but there's something more recent that just happened, like a training course in Mexico, for example. So this is a way to bring this information together, and I'll pass it on to Erin to talk about the use cases specifically that we also did as a part of the EOTech DevNet work, and then I'll wrap it up then about sort of what is next for the flight tracker, as well as how you could be involved in this effort if you're interested. So I'll pass it on to Erin and go back to the presentation and just skip through the slides that I already covered in the live demo. But if you have questions about the tracker, please put them in the chat. I'll have a look and make sure to answer them if I can. Erin, back
Thanks.
to you.
Thank you, Yasha. Thanks for such a great presentation, and thanks, Sagi, for this great opportunity to speak to the Flood Partnership. I see some very familiar names in the chat, colleagues who've participated in our community of practice meetings, as well as a couple of the authors of the case studies I'm going to mention. I see Calvin Suara from our CMRD is there, and Eric Anderson from the Severe Science Coordination Office, and of course our colleague Martina Gorska, who is also with the Secretariat based at the University of Jena in Germany. So we are very excited about these use cases because it's a demonstration of the strength of our brand new network and the ability of the communities of practice to collaborate globally. We set out several months ago with a question about how are flood extent tools used in practice, and what can we learn about the use of these tools across the life cycle of a flood event. So we put the question out to our communities of practice, and then had numerous volunteers come forward to provide cases from their region of flooding events. And they were all very different. If you see here on the screen, there were two that were hurricane cyclone related, the Central America, Eta and Iota, and then in Malawi, Ana and Gombe, looking at those experiences. Then Maluku, Indonesia had an onset of extreme rainfall that provided an interesting case. Similarly, Ebro River, somewhat different situation context, but sudden onset of heavy rainfall and flooding. And then the Chamoli, India case, which is a really interesting one, which was a rock slide triggered flood. And that one was particularly interesting because they thought initially that it was something different, that it was a flash flood, and didn't have the connection to the rock slide triggered aspect of it. And that was where the satellite information really came in handy, because the images showed that exactly what had happened. But in the beginning, there was a lot of confusion about what the cause of the flooding was. So satellite data provided a really interesting source of information there. But just wanted to underscore the fact that this was a global effort that tied together these regional event analyses together with an overlaying synthesis. And we've put these cases, each of them, on our flood tracker. They're available there under the resources. We are about to launch a new website in about 4 weeks, and we'll have them available. We'll promote these on social media, and then eventually we're working toward a journal article with that will feature some of the lessons learned. So you'll be seeing this. Hopefully you'll be finding it coming across your social media and maybe even in your inbox with a link there, and hope that you'll be able to read these and enjoy these and maybe even contribute your own case study, because it's kind of an ongoing effort to be sharing best practices in line with our mandate. So one thing I wanted to just quickly mention was that while we set out with this scientific question about the use of flood extent tools, one of the things that we really learned was about the capacity building aspects and the uptake and use and analysis. So I'll just quickly go through a couple of the learnings in the next few slides. No surprise that the Earth observation data was a critical link across the life cycle of the flooding event, but it was in combination with other data, of course, with hydrometeorological data, all the early warning work. So it was one element in the evidence chain, but a critically important element. I mentioned the Chamoli case. That event in India happened in a high mountain area which was already difficult to access, but then the floods took out a lot of the ground infrastructure, so the roads were impassable. So the satellite data was absolutely critical there for being able to understand what had happened there, and for helping with the response on the ground also. I've talked about tools. I haven't said anything about tools, but the flood inundation analysis was mostly used in the post-event analysis. Also, probably not a surprise to many of you on the call. But the tools that were the most used across this, Riley, you'll be happy to hear that GeoGlows was used in several of the cases. Also, the Copernicus Rapid Mapping Service was used, the European Flood Awareness System, and then HydroFloods. Those were the tools that were used the most across these 5 regional event analyses. So the next slide just mentions the fact that it talks about the people part of this, and the critical engagement of various agencies. And also there was a lot of reflections about the connection between the research and data community and the disaster managers on the ground. And there are some interesting lessons learned there. In the Central America case, for example, there was an existing memorandum of understanding. In that case, it was the NASA disasters program that had a memorandum of understanding with some of the response agencies in Central America. So as soon as the floods hit, as soon as the hurricanes hit, and the subsequent flooding, they were able to jump into action right away. So that made other situations, there was still some negotiation that had to go on, or some work that had to go on to bring the international community at least into play to support. But there was a little bit of concern expressed about this dependency still between the international data providers and the responders on the ground, and the need to keep hammering away at building the local national capacity building to be able to use this data. So that it turns from a dependency to a value add, and that the capacity exists locally among the responders. The next slide, I think, just talks about, again, strong public engagement and clear communications, and thinking about ways that the public can be involved in understanding the use of this information, the application. The Malawi case is a fantastic one that looks at the use of an early warning system and how that was created, and talks also about how the communities were involved in understanding the early warning system, so that when it was activated, people knew what to do. And there was a terrific outcome there in these 2 cases with Ana and Gombe, that there was no lives were lost in the regions that received the early warning, and that was not the case in previous major flooding events, where unfortunately there was a loss of life. So there was great lessons there about public engagement. Also, the Chimoli case again, I'd mentioned that there was this uncertainty about the cause of the flooding, and there was a lot of negative, or not negative, but wrong information that was on social media and in mainstream media. And so there was a lot of work that had to be done to counter that and share that information. So um, underscores the need for engagement and thinking about is for those of you that are really doing the applied work and engaging with decision makers, thinking about the external audiences as well. The next slide talks about capacity building, and this is where EOTech, where we live and where we work, and the thing that we're really interested in most is trying to think about ways to build capacity building. Um, the one thing that was underscored was the need for more capacity building on hydrological models. Again, bringing communities into the discussion so that they understand, and working locally and working with the actual decision makers and managers on the ground. So I think we still have our work cut out for us in terms of deepening the ability to use Earth observation information in flood situations. My last slide just is the take home message that these data and analysis tools are critical for effective disaster management. And it's always those sort of parameters of having the right information at the right time and having it be easily, readily understandable and interpretable by people who are making quick decisions and don't have a lot of time to weed through the technical aspects or to draw conclusions about the data themselves. It's critical to have things in formats where that it's readily accessible. So and again, the Malawi case underscores the fact that the losses, the avoidance of financial loss in this case due to the early warning is in some ways all we need to know about why this work is so important. Certainly fantastic to not have to devote resources to recovery that could be put into other things. So really such an important value in the work that we're doing, but keeping it connected to the end users, the decision makers is what is important to keep in mind across this work. So those are a few things I wanted to mention about the cases, and again, you'll be able to find them on our website, and we welcome further. If you have a case you'd like to share that looks at the use of EO data across the life cycle of the tools, or even weather data in general, we're very happy to have that. So thank you so much. Back to you, Yasha.
Oh, thank you so very much, Erin, for giving us insight into this use cases, work. And again, we're grateful for everybody who participating in this effort. Apologies if you hear my rowdy kids in the background. We're working from home. But here I wanted to leave with sort of sharing what's next for your Tech DevNet, flood tracker. That is, and it's probably never going to be complete, but we are hoping to continue to expand and update the content in there, make it even more user friendly. We're hoping to engage a wider flood expert community. That's one of the reasons we're here today to share with you this resource and get your feedback on it, and then adding the use cases for more flood events I think would be helpful, and eventually planning a campaign to really get the flood tracker in the hands of more users to start benefit from this information that is being collected. And this is I think my final slide here about how you can um, be involved in this type of work. Again, you can go to the tool tracker, website listed here. There's a feedback form there. You can add tools, you can add capacity building resources, and we would love to see you be part of the EOTech DevNet community. We have those regional communities of practice that I mentioned, or if you're specifically interested in just the flood, join the flood thematic working group. Our next round of meeting is going to be July 19th and 20th. So if you go to our website and sign up um, for updates, you'll get it. Or if you follow us on social media um, as well, just reach out to us via the email. Would love to hear from you and have you contribute and benefit from staying involved with EOTech DevNet. with that, I will conclude. Maybe just one last thing. Sorry, I sort of forgot to mention. Just wanted to thank the CS System Engineering Office who helped build the website on top of the sort of the database that we collected from the community. So we're very grateful to them for contributing to this effort as well.